My name is David Russhard. I'm the Principal Lecturer here in Civil Engineering here at NTU. And I want to talk to you a bit about students, what they're like, how we prepare them for industry, because they're the future of this industry at the end of the day, and I'm sure that you've all got students or young engineers coming up through your ranks, hopefully some from NTU. I know we've got strong relationships with a lot of companies, and not least, I think it's fair to say. So I wanted to talk to you about some of the challenges we face, some of the opportunities that we have, and what we're doing as a university to try and maximise that and make sure that the next generation of engineers are fit for purpose and ready for industry. So I want to talk about the student environment, what it looks like to be a student nowadays, what students expect, especially post-COVID, because that's kind of a watershed moment in our recent history, what we actually do to prepare our students for industry and how we know it's working, and then a quick summary for you to finish up. So the student environment, I think it's fair to say at the minute we're in the middle of something of a perfect storm when it comes to students. There is very much this sort of hostile environment, which tighter controls on things like immigration that have really affected universities and affected the general environment that students come into when they come from overseas. For our home students, of course, we've got big factors affecting them like inflation, cost of living crisis. We know now that, for example, the loans that students get often are outstripped by things like rent costs, so students have to work more and more, putting more pressure on themselves and limiting their ability to study. Not only that, the tuition fees haven't gone up in a very long time, until recently, and they went up by about 250 quid or something like that. But if we look at the state of the UK at the minute and higher education, it's in a very precarious position indeed. Many universities across the country are in very difficult financial waters, making redundancies left, right and centre. I'm pleased to say that Nottingham Trent University is a very stable, well-run university, and financially we're doing very well compared to a lot of universities in the UK. But we're by no means immune to this climate. So when students come to us, what is it that they're expecting from us? Well, we've got to remember that many of these students come to us with their education being significantly disrupted by COVID. Many won't have sat exams for a very long time, which obviously is going to be a culture shock when they come to us and we still have exams. Mental health has been a huge issue because they probably spent 2 years of those formative years of their life shut away in their bedroom, not a lot of social interaction, very difficult to come out. We see a lot more anxiety, and that's compounded by the fact that because of that isolation, social skills are much lower than we would have seen before COVID. But that means we've got a lot of very talented students that we take on who struggle to articulate themselves and make life almost more difficult for them. It's almost like a self-sabotage that they can come with. So we've got to try and get that out of them. We've got to help them to articulate themselves and be the best that they can be. And because of that, we've changed the way that we teach. When most of you were at universities, you probably go into a lecture and then a seminar straight after, so you have an hour of someone talking at you, and then maybe an hour of doing some sums, equations, doing a worksheet, whatever. Nowadays, we don't really teach in that way. We've gone to a far more interactive way of teaching. So we tend to teach in things like workshops with interactive elements to them, and something called flipped learning, which is where we might give them some information to look at before the session. It might be a video, it might be something to read, it might be something to do, that they then bring into a session to do it. And one of the big buzzwords that we have around the industry at the minute is this thing called authentic assessment. So it's not just this abstract, do some equations and I'll mark you on how well you've done, how well you've solved them. But actually what we're trying to do is reflect more on what would happen in industry and build scenarios that are much more lifelike so students can put things into context when they do their assessments. We've also brought in things like personal tutors, other specialist roles within our department to support students. So every about 15 students will have a personal tutor to talk through as a first point of contact while they're on the course. We also have things like year tutors who are responsible for the various stages of student development through the course. So first year tutors are very much about the transition from school, college, A-levels, wherever they've come to us from, into being at university. Second year, we're thinking about those work skills, getting prepared to potentially do a placement and moving into the final year. And final year tutors are looking at things like, how can you be more employable? What's your experience? Where are you going to next? Career planning, aspirational stuff like that. And of course, one of the things that we've got to look at the moment is the opportunities and the perils of AI. It's become a huge thing, I'm sure, within the construction industry. It's becoming big, and it's certainly here to stay in academia as well, where students are using AI. And by no means do we want to stop that use of AI. It's the future. What we want to do is think about how we can use that wisely, how we can get the right results. Because honestly, I have no problem at all with a student who's struggling to express their own ideas and go to AI to help them get that idea out of their head and onto paper. It's when that idea stops becoming your own that it's a problem. As a result of tuition fees, of course, education has become a lot more transactional. Students come to us, they pay their money and they expect to get a degree at the end of it, and there's more pressure than ever to get a 2-1. They used to be called good degrees, and I really hate that phrase, because a good degree is whatever the best you can do is, and you come out the other side and you can say, honestly, I got a 2-2, but that's a good degree. So I really don't like that phrase, good degrees. They've now changed it to upper degrees, and the sector average for this 2-1 grade or above is now about 75%. So 75% of students coming to university generally leave with 2-1 or above, which is great because we've invested a lot into improving the way we teach. And what we have to be very careful of course, is maintaining those high standards as we go forwards. This is difficult, of course. We've got Gen Z at the minute. I don't think anyone really understands Gen Z. Maybe Gen Z don't even understand themselves. If you looked for a sort of vox pop of what Gen Z are like, the words that come up quite often are words like anxious and difficulties in committing. And it makes it very hard for us to design a course to accommodate those expectations, those ambitions and those needs from our students. So those are some of the real challenges that we face in terms of the environment that we're in, the students that we have and their journey to get to us. So how do we go about preparing our students for being in an industry that, let's face it, is extremely competitive? It's not always an easy industry to work in, and they're going to face a lot of challenges along the way. So how do we take those students and mould them into the next generation of engineers? Well, as a sort of headline, one thing that we do a lot of is getting guest speakers in from industry to give their first-hand knowledge. I could sit here or stand here and talk to you for ages about whatever I want to talk about in my particular lecture or session, but hearing that from another voice who's come from industry really helps to reinforce it. We do industry-led projects, so I'm going to run through some of those in a minute, so I'm going to kind of gloss over those a little bit. And it forms part of what NTU phrases assessed work-life experience, AWLE, and it is a requirement now for NTU that we've got to have on a 3-year degree programme, not including placements, a minimum of 240 hours across that of what we call assessed work-life experience. That's got to be high quality work experience with an employer. It could go from projects to whatever. And it's a really good initiative that NTU have introduced over the last few years. We've used industry mentoring in the past as well, so students can work on their projects with actual industry professionals. And one thing we really like to do when we do that is to bring in alumni, people who haven't left us for very long. So often we pester students for the first few years of their career to come back in and see what they can do to help us out, to have a chat to some students, to give them some feedback on their project. Because we find that actually, if you were an 18-year-old first year sat down and a 40-something engineer comes in with 20 years of experience, then it can actually be quite difficult to relate to them. But if you've got a 22-year-old engineer coming in to have a chat with you who has been in your seat 4 years ago, then that conversation is a lot easier, and that's something that we're really trying to do. Because we have things like employer events, things like this, we love to have employers coming in to see us, careers workshops, careers fairs, CD workshops, and we do things for aptitude testing and things like that to make sure the students are prepared and they know what to face. So those are some of the things that we do, but we try and put that more into play in a practical sense in every session that we do. So I want to give you an example. This is at our level 4, so this is our first year students, and this is an example of how we do it. So this is in their structural engineering modules. Obviously a first year student doesn't know an awful lot about structural engineering, but we can teach them a lot about it by building some stuff and seeing how it works. So one of our big first year projects is this. We call it Design, Make and Break. We partnered up with Andun Consulting over in East Anglia, and what they do is the students build a balsa wood bridge, and they get help from Andun to design it, to analyse it by hand, to analyse it using software, and then also to go down into the laboratories and test it until it breaks. So we can see the differences at each stage and explain why this might be. Why is it that our bridge didn't fail at the load we predicted? And we can talk through that whole process about materials, about safety factors, about the way that it's been built. Is it built in exactly the same way? Can we model that in our software? Can we model that in our design? And Canada have been fantastic in providing us with engineers and their time driving all this way over to Nottingham to help us out, and it's something that students really react well to. Moving on to our second year projects, and this is one of my modules, a civil engineering construction module, where we work with Arcadis, and we've got a really great alumni graduated from us in 2021, and he's been very active in getting in touch with us to do some design. So in the last couple of years we've taken a train station that they've been designing in sort of Colchester area, and we've tasked our students with redesigning the whole of the sort of public realm aspect of that train station. So all of the car parks, the footpaths, the drainage, the bus stops, taxi ranks, all that sort of thing. And what we really drill into them is make it as accessible as possible and make it as sustainable as possible. Let's see your ideas. Draw it up, sketch it up, just get your ideas across as clearly as you can. And actually the engineers from Arcadis help us to grade that. So they look at the projects, they help us to grade it, they help us to give feedback on that project. And then the winning group that you can see there, we take them to the design offices in York, and they work with the actual project teams. So whatever project they've designed, that Arcadis have given to us, they will work with the actual project teams to present their designs, talk about why they made certain choices, get feedback on why the design team made certain choices. And we give them things like little prizes, little certificates and things like that to show that they've put the effort in, and they can use that on their CV moving forward to differentiate them, make them stand out from the pack, to show their enthusiasm for the subject. As we move on then, things get a bit more complex. And this is when we do our final year, we do a dissertation, as you might expect for a final year, but we also do a group project where students have to work together for the first term to design something, to solve a problem. So for our BEng and MEng students, what they do is this. Well, this is from a few years ago actually. We set them a real problem, a flood alleviation problem in Nottingham. So you might recognise that, it's just on the other side of this building, so out there. And what would happen is the sewers would flood, and unfortunately that would sometimes make the library flood as well, which was not particularly pleasant. So we tasked them, we gave them a basic sewer map, and we asked students to solve this flooding problem. They came up with some really great ideas. Now, this is one thing where you get that disconnect between students and sometimes what happens in the real world. And I remember this because it was one of the earlier projects that I worked on here at NTU. And the feedback that we got from the end of the module was, yeah, it was really fun, but the problem wasn't very realistic. And then they built it the next year. So if anyone goes out there, you can see Gallifrey actually built the shaft tank that's dried in the streets about 16 metres deep, I think, or something like that. So there's a huge big tank out there that's not very realistic. With our BSc students, we take a slightly different route, and they have the same module. They have a dissertation with a group project involved with that as well. We've got a long-standing relationship with Nottingham City Council on this, and we've been working on a lot of active travel routes and things like that for Nottingham, trying to make Nottingham a more sustainable place, looking at new crossings over the trains and things like that. So we combine it into this Cycle City project about all different kinds of infrastructure, but mostly focused on cycling. And what happens is the students will come in every week, they get consultation with the council, with their lecturers, to sort of evolve their project week on week, which culminates with a big presentation to industry on what they've managed to come up with. So again, it's a really engaging way of getting those concepts across, and also trying to get those skills that maybe they come lacking, like the social skills, the working with others, that's really key. We've talked today about those relationships that you have with people, being able to stand strong, to stick by your decisions, or to be flexible when you need to be. And again, trying to get that into students can be difficult. And then finally, on examples of what we do, this is our level 7, this is our MN. I can see some MN graduates in here, can shout at me. And this is again my module, so I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet, I just end up on a lot of projects. What we do is we work with the NET, which is Tramlink. You know, Nottingham's famous for having a tram network. And with Nottingham City Council, we've got a great relationship with them, where we've been looking at extensions to Nottingham's tram routes, so things like urban planning, sustainable transport, and how we would make that work if we were to reinvest that money. So it's great for assessed work-life experience, but what we've actually done this year is not only have assessed work-life experience, but also to make the project interdisciplinary. So we're working not only with civil engineering, but of all the departments in the school, we work with the product designers. And we did that because we think it's a challenge, but it works quite well. And what we've done is, if any of you go on the tram, you'll notice that there is a sort of branch off when it gets to Broadmarsh and heads towards the train station. Well, just there is a ghost tram stop called Broadmarsh, unsurprisingly. It's never been used, it's not big enough for a tram, but it is a ghost station. And the task was to develop that into a real, what we call tram stop of the future. So what would the tram stop look like in 30 years' time? How can we make it relevant? And we had to fit in with things like the council's master plan, with sustainability goals, and the civils basically designed the heavy stuff, the structure that goes with it, where we would liaise with product designers each week at certain touch points, and they would add the sort of user experience to that. So how do we turn it in from these concrete columns and slabs into things that we could use? How do we make it more navigable? How do we make it more comfortable? We had all sorts of great designs like green tracks, solar canopies, all sorts of great ideas. And there was some really interesting site investigation as well, where we go out onto the network. Sometimes we can manage to get students on the simulator to train to be tram drivers to see what that looks like for the day. So it's a great project, and it's one that we've got a lot of traction with over the years. We're looking to expand that, maybe bring in people like our construction managers to phase the works and things like that. And this is really the next step. So we've gone from work-life experience now to interdisciplinary work-life experience. So that's where we're trying to head in the future. Probably tricky with first years, because most first years don't really know what a civil engineer is. I'll hold up my hand up and say I didn't know that when I was first year either, because I don't think anyone could put into one sentence what does a civil engineer do. So as they start to learn and as they start to progress, this is the direction that we're really heading in. It's a direction of travel. As you probably know, our students go out on placement. We're very well known for sending our students out on placement. We always have a good turnout from them. And we call them back each year for this callback day, where our students create pin-ups of what they've done so far, the key projects they've worked on, their key learning over their placement so far. They can catch up with staff, get briefings about what to expect when they return to us the next academic year. We have talks from professional bodies. So this year we had Institution of Civil Engineers and Institution of Structural Engineers come in and give us a chat about how to use this experience towards your, whether you're going for I-Eng or C-Eng status later on, and progressing your career. And we also invite our second year students to this. so they can see what the placement students have been up to and get a bit of inspiration for themselves as well. The next thing, and this is a very recent addition, is that we're looking at an integrated foundation year, which we're going to start offering from this September. So what we do find is that those core skills are often quite low when students come to us. So for those students who maybe would just miss out, we can now put them onto our foundation year and they go through to our normal degree programs. And there are routes through onto our BSc course, our BEng course, and eventually onto our MEng course if they want to do that. So one thing that NTU is really well known for is the fact that you could join us as a BSc student without maths, no A-level maths. You could join us on a civil engineering course. You could transfer over to our BEng if you show promise, and you could leave us with a first class degree at master's level, all in one go in, say, 5 years. And we think that's really important to be able to let students do that and give them that chance to grow. So we're doing all this stuff, how do we know it's working? It can be difficult because there's a lot of hearsay out there, and it's hard to sometimes know the facts from the fiction. But our main source of information is the Graduate Outcomes Survey, called GOS. And it looks at the number of percentage of students in highly skilled work, so degree level work, 15 months after they graduate. Civil engineering averages 90+% each year that comes out, so it shows us we're doing the right sort of thing. The courses regularly hit 100% as well. That can be challenging when we have full-time courses when students haven't done a placement, but civils are usually the highest or second highest department in our school, which is the highest rated school in the university. And as you can see, we get some really good feedback as well about how positive students are about their course, and the last count we were 4th for the number of year-long placement graduates that are out there. So just to finish off, and a bit of a plea to you, is that we think we've got a great offering here at NTU. We think we really are preparing our students as well as we can. But as a bit of a plea, this doesn't happen without your help as an industry. And to guarantee the future of this industry and make sure we've got the right people with the right skills coming into it, we always ask if you're interested in helping out with that, through guest projects, through guest talks, projects, whatever it might be. We'd love to get in touch with us to see what we can do, and we're always open to being flexible and inviting whatever we can. So with that, thank you very much, and I'm back over to James and Josh.
Yeah, thank you.